I think there is a fundamental misstatement of the issue in the question. We can no longer continue to make policy for ourselves, in our country, in our region, in our continent, on the basis of whatever support the Western world or France or the European Union can give us.
They make African countries jump through hoops. Loans will never be able to pay. The US, when they borrow money, they're getting it in 1.5, 1.9 interest rate. Africans, when they get the same amount of money, they're paying 9, 10%. The people who don't need a break, they get a break. The ones who need a break, they don't get a break.
It will not work. It has not worked, and it will not work. Our responsibility is to charter a path which is about how we can develop our nations ourselves. It is not right for a country like Ghana, 60 years after independence, to still have its health and education budgets being financed on the basis of the generosity and charity of European taxpayers.
The sheer survival of the World Bank, IMF, is based on the fact that African countries and many other developing countries do not succeed. Their success is based on our failure. That has to change. And guess who can make that change? We, the children of Africa, we, the Africans, are the ones who have to say, we know your game now.
By now, we should be able to finance our basic needs ourselves. And if we are going to look at the next 60 years as a period of transition, a period whereby we can stand on our own feet, our perspective has not to be what the French taxpayer decides to do with whatever surpluses that they have in France. They're welcome. They're appreciated. Whatever interventions that the French taxpayer through their governments make to us are appreciated. We're not going to lick a gift horse in the mouth. But this continent, with all that has happened, is still today the repository of at least 30% of the most important minerals of the world. It is a continent of vast, arable, and fertile lands. It has the youngest population of any of the continents in the world. So it has the energy and the dynamism.
There are more Ghanaian doctors in New York City than in the entire country of Ghana. There are more Nigerian doctors in LA than in the entire country of Nigeria. So let's be serious here. What Africa needs is capacity, capacity, capacity. And that capacity is in the diaspora. So it behooves us to bring the diaspora together. Let them understand what is really going on in our Africa. Diaspora are not going home. Diaspora are angry about Africa because they are not understanding the root cause of why Africa is where it is today.
If we begin to build systems that tell the young people of our country that their hopes, their opportunity are right here with us. Migration and the movement of people is being presented in a manner which suggests that somehow it's a new phenomenon. There's nothing new about it. It's as old as man, the movement of people. And it has always been linked to the same thing. The failure of where you are to provide you with an opportunity, so you move somewhere else. Those of you who are familiar with 19th century European history would know that the biggest wave of immigration in 19th century Europe, the latter part of it, came from Ireland and from Italy. Waves upon waves, generations of Italians and the Irish people left their countries to seek the American paradise, largely because Ireland was not working, Italy was not working. Today, you don't hear it. Italian young people are in Italy. Irish young people are in Ireland. We want young Africans to stay in Africa. And how are they? And it means that we have to get away from this mindset of dependence. This mindset about what can France do for us. France will do whatever it needs to do for its own sake. And when those coincide with ours, tant mieux, as the French people say. But our main responsibility as leaders, as citizens, is what we need to do to grow our own countries. What are the institutions that work? that would allow us to have good governance, to have accountable governance, to make sure that the monies that are placed at the disposal of leaders are used for the interests of the state and not for those of the leaders, to have systems that allow for accountability, that allow for diversity, that allow for people to be able to express themselves and contribute to fashioning the public will and the public interest. Our concern should be with what do we need to do in this 21st century to move Africa away from being cap in hand and begging for aid, for charity, for handouts.
So let's look at an Africa that must be free to take care of herself, an Africa that's free from exploitation from outsiders. The multinationals who are stealing from Africa every day in broad daylight. I use an example of the DRC. If you ever fly very low over the DRC, you'll see tarmacs in the jungle. You'll see 747s flying into DRC, picking up minerals and flying right out. The same multinationals are responsible for arming young people and giving them MK-16s. Because why? Their satellites in the skies are telling them where that village is. There are lots of diamonds. So what do? Arm young people, drag them up, and send them to go chop off a few heads. The rest of the village runs away, so they come behind and do their illegal mining. We black people must understand what is really going on. Because what we are shown instead is, oh, look at those Africans killing each other. There are some serious games that have been played in Africa for far too long. And once we understand that, we can strategize as to how we can begin to bring the difference and bring the change that Africa needs. And that change can only come if the African diaspora are united and the Wakanda villages, as I call them.
The African continent, when you look at its resources, should be giving monies to other places. We have huge wealth on this continent. In our own country of Ghana, and we need to have a mindset that says, we can do it. Others have done it. We can also do it. And once we have that mindset, we will see it as a liberating factor for ourselves. We keep talking about how it was that Koreans, Malaysians, Singaporeans, who got their independence at the same time as us. We're told of that at the time of Ghanaian independence, per capita Ghanaian income was higher than that of Korea. Today, Korea is part of the first world. So is Malaysia. So is Singapore. What happened? Why did they make that transition? And 60 years after independence, we are where we are. Those are the matters that should concern all of us as Africans, as Ghanaians. And not, when I say so with the greatest of respect to the French president, I think that the cooperation of France is something that I am, as you know, a strong friend of France. I am Francophile. So I don't have any difficulty with that. But I'm talking about our own propulsion, what we need to do to get our countries to work so that we can create the conditions that would allow our young people to forego this hazardous effort to get to Europe. They're not going there because they want to. They're going there because they don't believe they have any opportunities in our countries. So that should be our focus.
But many will argue that because there's still foreign reserves being placed into French economy, it's just the same currency, different name.
Absolutely. I agree with that. The question I had right from the get-go, first, is pegged to the euro. Secondly, it's still going to be printed in France. Third, they may try to say we are eliminating the colonial tax, but they're replacing it with the foreign exchange tax. These countries are very capable of negotiating their own deals. Their funds don't have to go through the French central bank. Even countries wanting to trade with African countries, they don't have to go through French central bank. So there are all those technicalities that are just stupid. What's needed is complete separation. France has got to get out of Africa, really, honestly. Enough is enough. To take $500 billion out of Africa. I mean, it is insanity of the highest order. In countries that are supposedly poor, and making those countries fund French education, French healthcare system, create jobs for French youth while we are struggling in our country. It's no longer sustainable. President Macron needs to wake up and smell the coffee. And the African youth are the ones he's going to have to deal with. The African youth are not taking it anymore. They want what belongs to them. Financial institutions, them too. If I had my way, all the African heads of states should stop paying back any loans that were given by IMF and World Bank. Those loans have been paid gazillion times over.
If we change that mindset of dependence, that mindset which is contingent on aid and charity, we would see that in the decades ahead of us, the full flowering of the African peoples would take place. And that new African personality that was talked about at the time of our independence will become real and imminent in our times. That's what I'm saying. I hope that I'm not upsetting the questioner or even some of my friends who are here. But these are my strongly held beliefs. And that is the reason why I've adopted as the slogan of my presidency, of my period of the Supreme Office of Ghana, that we want to build a Ghana beyond aid, a Ghana which is independent, which is self-sufficient, that is capable of standing on its own feet and building its own life. We can do it if we have the correct mindset to do so. Mr. President, those are my contributions.
That we are going to take care of ourselves. We're taking care of our neighborhoods, we're taking care of our homes, we're taking care of our Mother Africa. That commitment and that change of mindset, once we have the change of mindset, the game is over. Because you can take me wherever you take me. If my mind is in the right place, there is nothing you can do to me.